Hey there, everyone. I'm Chief Meteorologist Eric Estreva. We are currently tracking a severe thunderstorm, and I'll let a few more of you move on into our stream, both on Facebook and YouTube, before I really get into the entirety of this storm. But this is a severe thunderstorm warning, the first one of the season and of the year in our area, and this is until 8:30 local time. It was issued just a few minutes ago, and it's right here in Shiawassee County with wind speeds up to 50 miles per hour. So some gusty winds are possible, but the main threat is going to be the possibility of hail up to the size of quarters. You can see that in this blue text box, severe thunderstorm warning until 8:30 local time. Shiawassee, that includes Owasso and Perry, for hailstones up to the size of quarters, which is that 1 inch in diameter. Could also have some gusty winds upwards of 50 miles per hour, but as of right now, the most significant threat is going to be from that hail potential. We're going to jump over to radar, and I want to show you this storm on radar. As you can see, there is another storm to the north which may have some gusty winds and some small hail, but it's this cell that has a ton of lightning now officially moving into far southwestern Shiawassee County. So towards Woodhull, you will likely have some of those larger hailstones up to the size of quarters moving into your community and your city here momentarily. There is also some broad rotation on the storm, so that's something we are going to watch very closely as well. As many of you may have heard, there was a pretty significant tornado in southwestern lower Michigan. Now, the ingredients up here for a tornado much less than they were down there. These storms are likely elevated, so the overall threat of a tornado is closer to zero than anything else, but it's something we are watching very closely. Anytime you get these storms ahead of a line like this, or even right along a warm frontal boundary, you can get some rotation, you can get some spin involved. But as of right now, the rotation appears to be elevated into the storm rather than closer to the surface. So the likelihood of a tornado, as opposed to just this storm rotating itself and allowing for some larger hailstones to occur, is more likely the scenario that we have right now. So this is the storm in question. Put a circle around it right here. And it is going to continue to move right along Interstate 69, currently moving in that northeasterly fashion. So if you live in Perry, if you live towards Bancroft and around Antrim, as well as anybody along M52, be prepared for some very heavy rain and the potential of those quarter-sized hailstones as this storm is slowly meandering off to the north and east. One thing else I want to do, I want to get our rotation. Look at rotation just to see if there's any rotation involved with this cell. We're going to go into our storm ready velocity. And as we were mentioning, there could potentially be some very broad rotation, but you can also see it's not all that particularly strong. You know, we have, and we're looking at the Detroit radar, so right out of White Lake, so it's pretty far away, but we do have some of that rotation that is kind of going towards the radar right here and maybe away from the radar. So a little bit of broad rotation, but nothing too striking, nothing too significant on radar that we are seeing right now. Nonetheless, it is a strong to severe thunderstorm, and it is capable of producing those hailstones up to the size of quarters. So here's that severe thunderstorm warning. Anybody in this orange polygon, you are under that severe weather threat of potentially some hailstones up to the size of quarters, which would be 1 inch in diameter. That includes Hazleton, Owasso, Vernon, Bennington, Bancroft, Antrim, Perry, and of course Woodhull. You are right underneath that storm right now. Now, this severe thunderstorm warning, it is only for Shiawassee County. No other county or communities in our viewing area here in mid-Michigan, or really at all in the state of Michigan right now, is under a severe thunderstorm warning. But we have this warning until 8:30 local time for that potential of 45 to 50 mile per hour winds. So that could still maybe do some minor damage to some very small tree limbs. But the main risk and the main threat is going to be hailstones up to the size of quarters. So very closely watching, monitoring the storm system. I would say the hail threat is the highest. Second highest threat is going to be that wind damage potential, and then a much lower risk of a brief or isolated tornado. I'll show you the storm on Doppler radar. As you can see, this line of storms is catching up with these individual cells. So that's going to effectively make them more of a wind threat and hail threat. But anytime you have a discrete cell, this cell just kind of moving through southern and western Lansing. So we'll have to see if they had any hail reports, but it is actually kind of picking up some steam. You can see over the last couple scans, we had more lightning. So that's an indication that this storm is strengthening. So we may, I know the warning says there could be some quarter-size hailstones. We may have some half-dollar-size hailstones as well, getting up to about 1 1/4. But yeah, this is the cell that we're monitoring right now. You can see as we zoom out, we have a pretty expansive line of showers and storms, but the only real risk is right here with that cell. There may be some small hail with this cell right here towards just to the north of Hazleton and we're jumping into Genesee County, but there is no severe thunderstorm warning in Genesee County. Brent Creek towards Montrose and eventually towards Vienna and Vienna Township. You may have some small hail, gusty winds out of that cell, but as of right now, the worst conditions coming out of this cell right here into Shiawassee County. We'll show you that severe thunderstorm warning once again until 8:30 local time. We'll go to that rotation, very broad rotation, and that's likely allowing for some of those hailstones to be lofted and allow them to get up to that size of some quarters. I'm going to go into our hail size tracker. Look at that storm in a little bit greater detail. So the hail size tracker, the estimated hail size, is a product that comes from the radar itself. And, you can get some pretty good information out of this, but it is currently indicating in that cell right now the potential of 1 to, I would say, 1 1/4 size hailstones. And that would be quarter to maybe even half-dollar size hailstones here in Shiawassee County. And as we were mentioning, it is moving in more of a north to northeasterly fashion. So anyone along Interstate 69 here in Shiawassee County, be prepared for some potentially larger hailstones. That includes Woodhull, Shaftesburg, towards Forest Green Estates, right along Lansing Road up towards Perry. If you are in Owasso, you are getting hit with a storm, but you are not in the severe thunderstorm, the worst storm right now. That is off to your south. It's closer to the Livingston and not Livingston, Ingham, and also more so Ingham, Livingston, and Shiawassee County border. So that's that estimated hailstone. What I will do is I'm going to get the forward progression, the speed of this storm, track it out for you guys. Moving northeast at 35 miles per hour. So we're going to go back to radar. And one thing I do want to show you as well, for those in northern Shiawassee and also towards Genesee, that storm that I was showing you towards Hazleton, Montrose, Vienna, there could be some smaller hail, maybe some dime-sized hail out of that cell. But the, of course, worst cell right now that we're tracking is right in here towards Woodhull and Perry in Shiawassee County. It has jumped a little bit. There's a lot of thunder and lightning that is happening with this cell. So if you live around Perry, hopefully the cars are in the garage. I know a lot of us probably haven't put out any patio furniture. Really probably don't have much out to begin with because it is still early March. It hasn't been that warm consistently enough for us to get excited to go outside more often. So just as long as I would say if your cars are in their garage or they're under some shelter, you should be good to go, but you may have some minor roof damage because of these quarter, maybe even half-dollar size hailstones that are coming into the city of Perry as we speak. As we were mentioning, it is moving off to the north and east, but you can see over the last couple of scans, it's kind of getting overtaken by this line of showers and storms, so that may envelop it, and that may tend to weaken this storm once it does so. but it's a storm nonetheless that we will be tracking here for, as long as is necessary, as long as we have those indications on radar that this storm is still potentially bringing some severe hail to parts of Shiawassee County. So I'm going to put a track on this storm, and we're going to move it pretty much right along Interstate 69. I would say that's a good direction that this storm is going to take, and will go about a half an hour out as it is moving again at about 35 miles per hour. So Maurice, here in Shiawassee County, this storm will be pretty much overhead, and the worst of the storm with the largest hailstones closer to about 750. Shiawassee, the city of Shiawassee in Shiawassee County, closer to 8 o'clock, then about 8:05, 8:10 for Vernon, and closer to about 8:15 in Venice. And this is just to the south of Owasso. So if you live in Owasso or just around Owasso, you're getting hit by heavy rain, some thunder and lightning. But the worst of this storm right now looks to be to your south. And it should primarily stay to your south, where we have some of the heaviest and largest hailstones that are coming out of this cell right now. Tiffany, as of right now, Birch Run, you can see up here, there is that cell that could be bringing some smaller hailstones, but I would say that cell probably will stay off to your south. So heavy rain, some thunder and lightning, that's pretty much it for you. The worst cell in Shiawassee County will definitely stay to your south. But this cell we're watching, Montrose, Brent Creek, you're probably encountering some smaller hailstones right now, and that would likely jump over towards Vienna, right along M57 here, Interstate 75 as well. Down to the south, again, this is our cell that is bringing the potential of some quarter, maybe even $half size hailstones to parts of southern Shiawassee County. We'll loop this out. This cell came out of Ingham County. It moved through the Lansing area. It picked up a little bit of steam here in far southwestern Shiawassee County. You can see that uptick in lightning, and that's an indication that that storm has strengthened, maybe a stronger updraft. But as of right now, still that hailstone threat, some gusty winds, definitely a lot of thunder and lightning, very heavy rainfall. As we zoom the picture out, we do have some of those more linear cells that are ongoing from about Saginaw down through Kalamazoo, Sturgis, South Bend. But none of those are severe currently. Candace in Flint, we're going to have to watch this cell, see if it continues to maintain its strength. I would tend to believe, now that it is being overtaken by this line, that it is going to progressively weaken. So I would say by the time it gets towards Genesee County, it will probably be weak enough that there will not be a severe thunderstorm warning that is issued. Chesaning, same thing for you. Deerfield, Davison, I think the storm is probably going to weaken by the time it moves closer to you guys as well. Something we're watching, but, it is colder, and just overall the ingredients here in Genesee and Shiawassee, not Genesee and Shiawassee, but Genesee and Lapeer counties, it's colder, it's foggier. The ingredients really aren't there for that sustainment of these cells this far to the north. So as it progresses eastward, it gets into that colder, more stable air. So I would say that the overall trend is going to be a weakening trend with this cell as it moves into moves out of Shiawassee into Genesee County. But we even had a little bit of small hail with this cell, Montrose towards Vienna. So we're watching this. This is our severe thunderstorm warned cell right here towards Perry, Pittsburgh, Shiawassee, Bennington, up towards Vernon, Durand, Duffield as well. We're watching for this cell to potentially bring some hail over towards you guys. Oxford, down here, you do have a cell that's approaching. Could definitely be some thunder and lightning, and also some very heavy rainfall, but nothing severe with this cell right now. Montrose, I would say small hail, gusty winds as these cells move on in, but I think by the time it moves towards you, we are going to see a weakening trend of that cell that's in your area right now, but definitely some small hail possible out of that cell. Damien in Sandusky, Michigan. So jumping over towards Sandusky, you can see you're still pretty far removed from this line. But don't be surprised if you have some gusty winds, heavy rain, some thunder and lightning, maybe some small hail. But I would think the severe weather threat by you is going to be closer to 0 because you are much colder than spots out here towards Lansing into Shiawassee County as well. Jason, Ogemaw, you'll probably still have some showers and storms later on tonight, but I think you're good to go. Same thing into Mount Pleasant. I think once we're past this line, yes, we will probably have some more showers and storms as this front lifts back on off to the north. But as of right now, I'm not really seeing much in the way of a sustained severe risk overnight tonight. So I'm going to go through the progression once again. We also have a new... This is a special weather statement on that cell that I was talking about that could bring some small hail, gusty winds. You can see that hail potential maybe up towards penny size now. I was talking about dime, maybe, marble-sized hail, but, this is indicating some 30-mile-per-hour winds and maybe some penny-sized hail, and that's that cell near Montrose. So anybody northern Genesee getting into parts of Tuscola, southern Saginaw counties, just be on the lookout for this cell. I would say for the most part it is weaker than the cell to our south, which is still severe warned, and that is for the potential of winds up to 50 miles per hour, still until 8:30, hail up to the size of quarters. When you get quarter-size hailstones, that's when you could potentially have some damage coming out of this cell. Raina, since you're in the Montrose-Clio region, you may be hearing some, as you were mentioning, some of that hail pounding on your windows. So hail is definitely a threat with any of these storms tonight, but a lot of it will stay sub-severe, very small hail overall. Owasso, you look to be south, or at least north. That strongest storm is south of you, so you're north of that strongest storm right now. I think you're just kind of going through some heavy rain, some thunder and lightning. Caro, I would say your severe weather threat is going to be minimal tonight as you are pretty chilly right now. Clio, we're going to watch this cell, Tom, for you in Clio coming out of Shiawassee County, but I would say probably by the time it gets towards Genesee County, it will be weakening progressively, and I don't think we'll have a severe thunderstorm warning at that point in time. And it even looks like it is weakening right now on our radar system. But still the potential of some hail, Shiawassee, Vernon, 758, 804 respectively, Venice towards 812, 819 in Clayton. But you can see, usually, and I'm going to take the lightning off. So one thing that we very closely look at on radar, especially when we're talking about and determining the potential intensity of this cell. You can see southwestern Shiawassee County. This was back at 7:38 p.m. There was a lot of purples and pinks. That's an indication of some pretty large hail. But as you can see, over the last couple of scans, we're losing that purple and pink, which is probably an indication that the storm is weakening. We're losing that more significant hail threat. Still a lot of thunder and lightning, but overall, even this cell looks more impressive now than points to the south and west. So, Vienna, Ferdinand-Dale, as well as just to the south of Birch Run, up towards potentially maybe Arbella. Watch out for some small hail coming out of this cell. But overall, I would say this cell here in Shiawassee County is weakening, which is good news. But still, the potential of some hail out there right now in Shiawassee County. We'll watch this storm as it moves into Genesee County. But I would say those that are Flushing, Flint, Grand Blanc, Genesee, Davison, you probably are not going to see the quarter-sized hail. Same thing, Schwartz Creek and Bancroft. Fenton as well. Fenton, I don't think you're necessarily in line for a severe thunderstorm. But, if you are hearing me right now, if you live in Tuscola, Sanilac, Lapeer, Oakland, Macomb, St. Clair, Livingston County, it's mainly going to be heavy rain, thunder and lightning, some small hail, some gusty winds. I think a lot of us will not see any severe thunderstorm warnings or any severe weather just, to begin with. I know a lot of us may be on heightened alert because of the tornado that happened just a couple hours from us near Kalamazoo, near Battle Creek. But our tornado risk is a lot lower, a lot closer to zero than, than it was down to the south and west. So, just as a reminder, we have that severe thunderstorm warning here in Shiawassee County until 8:30 local time for some quarter-sized hailstones. One thing I'm going to go back to is our hail size monitor, and you can see that, over the last couple of scans, we're losing those blues, we're losing those lighter purples, which would be that indication of larger hailstones. Now that it is in the darker purple, that's some smaller hail. And the same thing up here towards Montrose. So I would say, dime, penny-sized hail probably coming out of these storms now. And these storms are weakening, which is good news. We don't want any damage. We don't want any significant issues from any of these storms. They are weakening as a result of moving into some less than favorable ingredients. So I would not be surprised if that severe thunderstorm warning is allowed to expire early. It is set to still remain in effect until 8:30, but I'm not seeing much indication that, we are seeing a necessity that this severe thunderstorm warning should continue, or at least continue into Genesee County. So if you live in Genesee County, Lapeer County, Tuscola, up here towards Sanilac, as well as out St. Clair, Oakland, Livingston, Macomb, just be prepared for some heavy rain, thunder, and lightning. Nothing that should be too necessarily severe, but some gusty winds, small hail possibly out of the cells that have a little bit more lightning involved with them. So, this cell up here towards Vienna, in towards Thetford, as well as Arbella and Genesee. And then down here, Hazleton, Flushing, could be seeing some small hail out of that cell. And of course, this cell that's coming out of Shiawassee towards Antrim, Bancroft, Vernon. It may also be speeding up a little bit more because it's being overtaken by that line. Clio, you may have some small hail, gusty winds, but I don't think your severe weather risk is really there necessarily to worry or be concerned about. Still under that warning right now, but as we're looking again, our hail tracker not really showing much out of either cell now. So, I think a lot of us can rest a little bit easier knowing that the hail and wind threat is starting to wind down a little bit. As you can see, the last couple of scans, we're losing those purples, the pinks, which would be a better indication of a hail threat. And this lightning, the lightning involved with these cells is also starting to come down a little bit more. So, it's not an exact science, but usually when you see less lightning, storm is weakening. One thing I do want to mention is this is the only severe thunderstorm warning that we have in our area. There's one down here towards some of the hardest hit areas that were, going through that tornado that happened just a few hours ago. They're still under a severe thunderstorm warning, which is kind of crazy to think about. You go through a tornado and then you got a severe thunderstorm warning a couple hours later. The rest of our area, we do have this special weather statement for some small hail, gusty winds. But our severe thunderstorm warning here in Shiawassee County still ongoing until 8:30 local time. All right, all right, all right. One thing I do want to show you guys, I'm going to show you the temperatures. Just to give you an idea of where this warm front is. So we've got our warm front. I would say it's still not in the area quite yet. You know, we may have an elevated warm front right here where we've got 50-degree temperatures. You know, so we may have that warm front kind of stretching right in here. That's the first warm front. But I would say there's a second warm front that's really right about here. So, you know, as these storms move off of this first warm front into the slightly colder air, that's going to weaken things. But especially as they get into these 40 temperatures, 30-degree temperatures, that's even weaker of a ingredient profile for us to see anything severe. So I would say our severe weather threat right now is more so right here where we have the lower 50s. You know, as you move further away, it's colder, less favorable for any of those severe thunderstorms to occur. And as we can see, this storm up here towards Vienna has weakened. Still some thunder and lightning, small hail. Maybe seeing a little bit better of a hail threat here towards Flushing. You know, this includes Carpenter Road, Elms Road, some small hail towards Pearson Road, North Linden Road, West Mount Morris, towards North Seymour Road. May have some small hail coming out of that cell. And then this cell here in Shiawassee County, down towards Antrim, as well as up towards Vernon. Still some gusty winds, small hail, but that severe weather threat is coming to an end pretty quickly here as these storms are moving into some less favorable conditions. We also have this cell out towards Brandon, Oxford, Orion Township. Not much concern with that one, just some heavy rain. Tiffany, still some showers and storms could happen overnight. As of right now, your severe weather threat is pretty close to zero. You may have some heavy rain, thunder and lightning, some small hail, gusty winds as these storms move into the city of Flint here over the next hour. But I would say your threat of severe weather, so damage, is close to zero. Bradley, thank you for your report. Lots of lightning, thunder, heavy rain. I'll take it over from here. That was a good impression of somebody out in the field giving us those observations. You know, I love hearing about what's happening in your city, community, whatever's going on, any indication that we can get of what's happening in your city gives us an idea of what's happening from the storm. Because, you know, I'm only in one spot. I can't be everywhere all at once. So you guys are my eyes and ears as to what's going on in your community, your city as well. Brenda from Milford, I would expect you to have some thunder and lightning, maybe some small hail, gusty winds as these storms, you know, there is a storm right here that's coming out of far southern lower Michigan. You know, that's one that bears watching, but I would say you in Milford shouldn't have too much in the way of a severe weather risk. So they have yet to allow this severe thunderstorm warning to expire. They actually just shaved it off a little bit more. So they're continuing it. Shishanti, rains off, thunder, lightning. Okay, well that's good. Montrose, you are pretty much out of the worst of the storms. You're kind of just in the heavy rain behind it. So we have this line that is moving east. Everything behind this line is pretty stable. Yeah, Lance, I'm pretty much right in that same vicinity. We're just starting to get some heavy rain as well. Danny, for the Lapeer area, you're not under a warning. And I would say these storms are going to continue to weaken as they move towards you. Same thing for Holly. You know, as we mentioned, guys, I'll show you the temperatures once again. As it gets colder here into the thumb in Oakland County, north of US 10. Most likely going to see a weakening trend in these storms, just because they have less of that heat and humidity to feed off of, so they're going to start to weaken as a result. Corona, Duran, you guys will likely have some thunder and lightning, some heavy rain, maybe some small hail, some gusty winds, but really overall, Lennon, same thing for you. For Lansing, you are pretty much done with these thunderstorms right now. Christine, Linden, you'll have some showers and storms coming on in, but nothing severe for you. Carmen, same thing for Lansing. You are pretty much in the clear now. You know, you're getting out of the worst of these storms, and behind it, there's nothing really happening as well. Carmen, do you know how large the hailstones were in your area? Yeah, we've just got some thunder here at our studio right now. One thing we may be starting to see is some gustier winds coming out of this storm right here into Burns. So be prepared for some potentially gusty winds in southern Genesee County. I wouldn't say anything too particularly severe, but some gusty winds nonetheless. For those of you mentioning Carroll, we'll jump up to Carroll. I know it's not on the map, but it's right here. So you guys are pretty much going through the worst of it right now. Really not all that significant or bad. But I would not worry too much if you live in Carroll. You pretty much just have some thunder and lightning, some heavy rain. That's about it. Flint, Burton area, as you can see, we're kind of getting into the heavier rain, thunder and lightning. You may have some gusty winds, some small hail, but that's really about it. Rye, that heat lightning that you were seeing is actually the lightning that you're hearing now. You're just too far away from the lightning, so you were seeing that lightning in this storm. It was just too far away for you to hear it, and now that it's close enough, you've got that regular lightning and thunder because you're close enough to hear it. Yeah, guys, a lot of us will just see some thunder and lightning, some heavy rain, maybe some gusty winds, nothing too severe, maybe some small hail as well. But the overall severe weather risk is going down currently. I'm a little bit surprised that they still have the severe thunderstorm warning. I think they could definitely go ahead and cancel that early. But, you know, as of right now, worst of the storm is in eastern Shiawassee. It's going to jump into Genesee. So if you live along and south of Interstate 69, you may have some gusty winds, some small hail. Nothing that should get too out of hand. Everyone else north of this, we're kind of just going through some heavy rain. You know, if you live north of Interstate 69, more so north of M46, just some heavy rain for you guys. South of M46, especially closer to Interstate 69, you know, you may have some small hail, some gusty winds, some definite thunder and lightning, and definitely some heavier rainfall as well. One thing I'm looking at right here is you can see a little bit of a backwards C right here. And that's just kind of an indication that there's some stronger winds maybe pushing out of this storm in southern Shiawassee County. So if you live, and I'll put some cities on the map. If you live down here, Argentine, Fenton, Lake Fenton, Mundy Township, Grand Blanc, Duffield, Shorts Creek, you may have some gusty winds coming out of this. But overall, you know, even just kind of looking at that estimated hail tracker, we don't even have any purples on our map anymore. So the reason that they put this severe thunderstorm warning was because of the hail. Really not seeing that significant hail threat. You may have some very small hailstones, some pea, maybe dime-sized hail like we are getting reports of out of Montrose by Eric. But overall, really nothing that I'm too necessarily concerned with. So we can rest a little bit easier this evening that these storms are weakening a little bit more. One thing this might do is it might keep the warmer air down to our south for a little bit longer, so we may not get into the 50s and 60s until later tonight and for tomorrow. But that's good news, you know, in my opinion. Less fuel for these storms to work off of and to work with. Tanya, yeah, it's pouring here too. Got some thunder and lightning also rumbling. But what I'm not hearing is any hail, so that's good news. Those right here, Clayton down through Burns, over towards Flint, Grand Blanc, Fenton, anyone in those areas, be prepared for some gustier winds. Nothing that should be severe or cause any damage, but be prepared for some gusty winds along with some very heavy rain, some thunder and lightning. Tiffany, are we supposed to have storms tomorrow? We are going to have storms tomorrow. So that's one thing we'll be monitoring. It looks like the most widespread threat of storms will actually be out there in the morning. And then we will see maybe a second round in the afternoon. But I would say the threat for severe weather tomorrow is pretty low. So if you're doing anything tomorrow, if you have any plans, just be prepared for some thunder and lightning, some heavy rain to kind of push you back into your car or push you back inside. But the overall risk of severe weather should be pretty low for all of us. Something we'll watch, but I'm not too concerned with it as of right now. You know, there's not much concern with these storms currently right now either. But there is still that severe thunderstorm warning in effect. So once this storm moves out of Shiawassee County for good, you know, I'll likely end this stream. Terry, yeah, you're kind of getting out of the worst of the storm now. Again, right here, as this storm is kind of giving us a little bit of a backward C shape, that could be an indication of some gustier winds, maybe upwards of 40 miles per hour, but nothing that's severe, so I wouldn't expect a severe thunderstorm warning in Genesee County, but some gustier winds nonetheless. Thunder and lightning, heavy rain expected into Schwartz Creek by 8:17, Mundy 8:24, Lake Fenton 8:28, Grand Blanc towards 8:33, Burton by 8:37. And if you're just joining us, I did put a track on this cell just because it's potentially bringing some gusty winds. Nothing that's severe. There's no other severe thunderstorm warnings that have been put in place for Genesee County right now. But, you know, as we were mentioning, you can kind of see that backward C shape indicating maybe some stronger winds kind of coming out of this southern cell. You know, that could also be a gust front, which is kind of like a cold front that's coming out of this storm. So if you live towards Argentine, Fenton, Lake Fenton, Mundy, Schwartz Creek, or Grand Blanc, over towards Holly, Groveland, you may have some gustier winds, but nothing that should be severe. Nothing that we're too concerned about right now. Going back to the hail size tracker, not seeing anything, so that's good news there. Now that this storm is moving more so into Genesee County, we'll give this stream probably until 8:20, and then we are going to let you guys get back to your evening activities, as the storm threat will be pretty minimal for the rest of tonight into tomorrow. But we'll give it until 8:20 once the storm is fully out of Shiawassee County and more so into Genesee County. Yeah, you guys might be able to see it on radar. Kind of acting like a cold front here. And it's got that C shape, so that's an indication of some gustier winds that are coming out of this storm. Tiffany, have a great night. Thank you for stopping on in, being weather aware. Happy to give you guys all the information that I can. Everyone else that's dealing with some thunder, lightning, heavy rain, nothing severe, which is good. Brian, when he was talking about heat lightning, so heat lightning can actually happen when it's 50 degrees. I wouldn't necessarily call it heat lightning at that point, but heat lightning that we always mention is just lightning that's too far away for you to hear. So if you see lightning 20 miles away, but you can't hear it, that's what we consider heat lightning. But doesn't necessarily mean it has to be 90 degrees. You know, you can get it any time of the year. Go back to velocity. Yeah, so got some winds that are pushing out of this storm right here in southern Genesee. Now this is nothing too particularly strong as well. And they have dropped the severe thunderstorm warning. So we have no more severe thunderstorm warnings in effect. You know, we'll of course watch this, but I would say this is more so going to come to the east as opposed to anything in our area. So we are done with any severe thunderstorm warnings. There is this special weather statement, but I think that's also going to get dropped before 8:30. Tyler, no indication of rotation. Very good news there. Lorena, any of these storms could bring power outages? No, I don't think they are strong enough. Tyler, definitely not a tornado possible. Just some winds, some small hail, definitely a lot of thunder and lightning, and some heavy rain. So that's going to do it for me, guys, on this Facebook Live. I want to make sure I reiterate before we end this stream. Severe weather risk. There is no warnings any longer. The severe weather risk is higher to our south. We have a very small risk throughout the overnight, but you're seeing probably pictures, videos of the tornado that happened to our south. I am not worried or concerned about that. Not worried or concerned about any major threat of severe weather overnight. Maybe some small hail or gusty winds. Otherwise, you know, you may have some heavy rain, some thunder that wakes you up, some small hail, gusty winds, but I think, you know, our severe weather risk is pretty low to pretty much close to zero for the rest of this evening and tonight. So just want to reassure you guys that, you know, our severe weather risk is definitely not as high as those down to the south where they have better ingredients. They have higher moisture, higher humidity, which aided in that tornado earlier on today. So make sure you are praying for those communities that got hit by that tornado. You know, any support that you can give to those communities, because they are going to be rebuilding. They are going to be reeling for weeks, months even, because that was a pretty strong tornado that they had just to the south. And, you know, any support that you can give those that were hit hardest by those tornadoes near Battle Creek, near Kalamazoo, near Three Rivers, I know they would definitely appreciate it. We are going to wrap this stream up. Again, no more severe thunderstorms.